Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of Generation to Generation, Bridging the Gap with Rex
and Eva.
All right, and
we're so excited.
We are so excited.
I love how that's just become part of our show. It
has become part of our show, and I think we've mentioned this before, but one day I actually broke out in the song. We're so excited. That's by the Pointer Sisters.
Yeah, and then you looked at the lyrics after and realized they weren't very family friendly. So
yes, we cut the whole thing. But yeah, you had to be
here.
Through
our minds.
You had to be here. It was kind of cool watching Dad bust out on "We're So Excited." You got to admit.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. It was kind of cool. And, I actually had it pulled up on my playlist. I hit it. And, I was kind of jamming along. And we're like, man, that's going to be cool. That's going to be a cool little segment of the episode.
It was
nice. And then as we do, as anyone should, you should always review your content and your choice of words. And I went back and looked at it. What is that song really about? And I'm like, delete, delete, delete. Not the proper example we want to set.
Nope.
But I will say this, it's still a catchy tune.
That can be said about a lot of music nowadays.
Right.
I know I'll play something. One of my favorite songs is this one Harry Styles song, and I'll play it in the car, and you'll just look at me and you'll be like, these are not good lyrics, which says a lot because he does not listen to lyrics at all. And I'm like,
I do. It's kind of weird. I do not listen to the lyrics a lot of songs. What really grabs me is the rhythm and the beat of a particular song. I really like drums. So if you got a good drum beat going, of course, all music really is off of a drum beat, if you know anything about that.
But there's one song. Well, there's one song I play that he knows every lyric to, which is really funny because again, he's not the person to know lyrics. I'll sing him a song. He'll be like, I don't know it. He'll be like hum the beat, and he'll know it then. But there's this one Harry Styles song. I love it. It's like my most listened to song for the last 5 years or whatever. And every time it comes on in the car, he just looks at me and he's like, really? Really? I'm like, this is not a battle. You're winning.
I know, right? But it's not. The lyrics on that one are not good.
Nope.
Okay.
Anyway.
But hey, you know what? The brain is a powerful, powerful thing. I shared this with someone recently. I don't know what it is. I've just been thinking a lot about values and about the oaths that we take over the course of our life. For me, I took an oath when I joined the Army. It's called the oath of office. Soldiers take the oath of enlistment. I had an oath as a Boy Scout. We recited the Apostles' Creed every Sunday in church. That was just part of the routine. But we used to sing songs talking about lyrics out of hymnals. That was the thing back then. You pulled the hymnal out. The pastor said, hey, or the worship leader said, turn to page 97, and we're going to sing Blessed Assurance or Just As I Am or whatever it was. Well, here recently, I've been blown away. I've kind of just woken up with some of these old hymns on my mind, and I've been kind of humming them just in my subconscious. And then as I wake up, I started singing them. I'm like, do you remember the song? And I've been blown away at the amount of hymns that I remember the precise wording. And I'm like, and it's just a testament to the brain is a powerful, powerful thing. Once it's in there, imprinted on your heart, especially, and imprinted on your mind, it's in there. We always talk about recordings. Your mind is constantly recording. So anyway, the song that I'm particularly thinking about, look it up, y'all, go Google it, but it's called Blessed Assurance. But the chorus is, this is my story. This is my song. All the day, or praising my Savior all the day long. I hadn't sung that song as a hymn in 50 years, and I woke up with it the other morning on my mind. So anyway, it's kind of crazy.
Find it on Spotify.
Talking about lyrics. And World Traveler, you're back from
Texas.
San Antonio.
Yep. I was visiting my best friend. It's the funniest thing. So a little bit about me and my best friend, because if not, it's going to sound completely insane what I'm about to tell you. We hated each other in middle school. Always were competing to be the best, the smart, all these things. Okay, so she moves right after COVID happens to Texas. And we start exchanging One Direction songs back and forth. Just texting. That's all we would do. It would be like, hey, have you listened to the song? And then we would talk for a little bit. Became best friends, okay? So we didn't go see each other a lot. And then freshman year hits, and I go visit her for the first time. And now every September and every January, we alternate who goes to see each other. So she was here in September. I went in January. I'll go see, she'll come here in May, all those things. But we talk on the phone every single day, like for hours. Like sometimes we're not even like talking to each other. We're just sitting on the phone doing homework just because that's what we do. Okay. So when I go visit her in person, we literally don't exchange a lot of words with each other because we talked on the phone, the night before I fly out there. There's nothing going on in my life that she doesn't know about. And so when we get there together, her parents laugh because we're sitting in her room, both individually scrolling on our phones, but just laying across her bed. And it's like, they're like, are y'all not like talking? And it's like, what is there to talk about? We've already talked about it. And it's just the funniest thing because her friends and when we're hanging out with our friends and stuff, it's fine because there's a lot happening. But when we're just together, it's like, that's the whole point of it. And so it was very interesting, but it was fun. It was relaxing. It was a nice break from school and college decisions and all those things, just getting to be with her.
Well, we are glad you're back, your mother and I. And
I know.
It's interesting though, because that description is so different than my childhood, but I've had to learn as a parent, that's just the world that you live in.
Yep.
And you guys have embraced that. You don't know what my world was like. Nope. I have the advantage of, I get to see your world. You didn't get to see mine. You just kind of got to take my word for it. Yep. But it's changed so rapidly. And to think about, you guys are, at distance, but yet you're closer than you've ever been. And you show up and you're basically, there's nothing to catch up on. No. It's just kind of wild. But anyway, I love it.
It's so funny. And it's funny to me because we joke, because we watch like Netflix shows with each other. So every night, much to Mama's, is it chagrin? Is that the word?
Chagrin.
Yeah.
Yes.
We go through series, and there's been a lot of shows we love that got new seasons. So Mama's every night, she's like, why don't you come down and watch this with me? I'm like, because I'm on the phone with Georgia. So we joke that, we're just really prepared for college because most friends are going to have to figure out how to do long distance or they're going to lose their at-home friends when they go off to college. But we've been doing it for 4.5 years now. And so we're down set, we know we learn each other's schedules and we know when they're in their dorm or when they're in their room, and we call and we watch a show together, and that's how we catch up, and then we go to sleep and do it again the next day. And so we were very grateful for that because now going off to college, especially being an only child, it'll be nice to have that little bit of, my childhood still with me.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And again, I mentioned it is certainly different for you in Georgia than it was for me and your mother. But that's a great
That's a great segue.
It's a great segue because we're going to talk about different.
Yes, and this episode idea came from visiting a church with her and her family. And her pastor was talking about parables, and it was specifically the parable of the seeds and the sower. And he was like, a lot of people want to say that 3 out of the 5 seeds listed were Christians. And he was like, but I challenge you that there's only one that was really Christian, which is the one that, flourished. But he was talking about how the lines in the verse of like the good seeds produced 100-fold, 60-fold, 20-fold, how when you follow your purpose with God, you may not produce as much as the next person because your journey is different, right? Your life, your childhood, how much water you get, how much you've been fed, all these things is different. And he was talking about how you can't understand your place on the path to heaven if you don't understand the worldview at which you see the world, but also how others see the world, because you're not going to be able to fulfill the Great Commission if you don't understand where other people are coming from. And we talked about this in the last episode, if you harden your hearts to others, right? If you don't want to hear what's going on in other people's lives or how it's different from how you do things, then you're not going to be an effective communicator. And you have to do the same thing with the worldview. You have to understand the opposing person's worldview to be able to communicate effectively with them. Like in my school right now, we read the entire Quran to understand the Islamic religion. And if we were to ever find ourselves in a situation of communicating with them, we would understand where they're coming from and why they believe that and how to effectively communicate with them. Because being blind to a situation doesn't mean you can avoid it.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. And matter of fact, I was actually really excited when you got in the car last night when we picked you up at the airport and you started talking about that particular pastor's message. It was obvious it resonated with you. Yeah. You were really excited about it, and it gave you a different twist than you had ever heard on that particular parable, which, by the way, is told in 3 of the 4 Gospels. That appears in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Yep. And so, great parable, but I love the fact that you walked away with something different from it.
Well, he had went into it saying a lot of people want to preach this, talking about the different types of Christians, the one that gets choked out by the world, the one that has their foot half in the world, half in Christianity, and the one that's sold out for Christ. And he was like, but I want to challenge that's different. But we can't even discuss what type of Christian it is if we don't understand the conditions needed to follow the path, what it takes to follow the path, what it takes, the hardships and the suffering. And when you're following the path and there's a hardship versus when you're straying off the path and facing a consequence. And so it was just a very, very good message. I loved it. It was a different take on that. I've heard a lot of pastors talk on that parable. So it left me with a different view of it, a different view of it.
I think it's great. And so, when you mentioned, hey, Dad, can we talk about worldviews? I was like, yeah, sure. That's an easy conversation. And I'm going to throw a different twist in it and tell you what, I've mentioned this before. Paul, it's one of the very first things your grandfather ever said to me. But he said, son, you and I are going to have a difficult time communicating if you don't understand that I have a biblical worldview. My view of the world comes out of what I read in the Bible. And so that's the first thing in terms of this broader subject of worldview and understanding people. There are, you can Google it, depending on what you come up with, there are 5 to 7 different worldviews, and there are 5 to 7 different components of a worldview. But basically, I'm going to keep it very simple. Basically, a worldview is, hey, what is it that you think about the nature of God, the nature of man, the nature of the universe? Was it the Big Bang or was it created? What's your viewpoint on that? What's your viewpoint on ethics and how man makes decisions? Those things kind of fit into what your particular worldview is. Religion plays a part in that. Some people don't believe in God. Some people believe in multiple gods. Some people believe in one God. Primarily Christians, Islamic people, and the Jews believe in one God. We have some differences, but your worldview basically determines everything in terms of how your perspective is, and that kind of leads you in your conversations.
It's the melting pot. It's the melting pot of your convictions and your experiences and how you view the world. It's the color of lenses you wear, right? And everybody can have, it's like Christians may all have, I'm going to use a color, but they could all have blue lenses, but every single Christian's lens could be a different shade of blue because we don't have the same journey. And that's so funny. I used that same analogy to explain Immanuel Kant, but it makes sense. It's how you view the world. It's how you view the world through your eyes. It's the melting pot of everything that makes up the way you see the trees move and how you, like you said, see religion. And I think it's just important to understand that not everybody believes exactly as you do.
Exactly. And that's what makes it difficult sometimes, because we have difficulty in this technology-based digital age. We have a hard time having civil conversations face-to-face. You and I have talked about that over and over again, especially with those that differ. And so here's basically, to break it down very simply, when your grandfather raised me, I was basically taught 2 opposing worldviews. There's the biblical worldview, which you and I espouse, and then there's the secular human worldview. At the biblical worldview, God is at the center of that. In the secular humanism worldview, man is at the center of it. And to make it real simple, basically we're talking about, in a biblical worldview, we believe in absolute truth. God has determined the truth. He's told us the truth. Well, in secular humanism, man kind of develops the truth as he goes along.
In my science class, I think we talked about this because we approached every first chapter of our science book generally talks about worldview and where the worldview of the book is being taught from so that we understand it. And it said, having a biblical worldview is having God at the center, knowing he created man and everything in it. But having a secular worldview is believing man is at the center and created God to justify the morality and ethics of something. And I thought that was a very good way of defining that. And that's how I've viewed worldview ever since.
I think that's a great way to put it.
It was like 2 pictures. It was like because obviously it was a science class, so it was like the Earth revolving around the sun versus the sun revolving around the Earth, and it was like the center of the universe versus the heliocentric versus the geocentric model, and it was very, very interesting, and that's how I've pictured it ever since. That's how people view the world too, is that it revolves around them, and that if it doesn't directly affect them, it doesn't matter. And if it affects them, then it's everybody else's problem too. Like, it's just, that's how I've seen a lot of it.
Okay.
And
I think it's great.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you a very simple one that parallels what you just said. In the biblical worldview, if we look in Genesis 1, God created man.
Yep.
In the secular human world, in their viewpoint, man created God.
Yep.
Okay, they're two opposites. In the first
They're
one,
mirrored.
God created man in his image. In the second one, man tends to create God in our image. We make God look like what we want him to look like. And there's a challenge and a problem
And
with
I feel
that.
like, and I'm sorry if I call you out with it, but I can attest to it too. But if you're a Christian who has your foot half in the world, then you're only going to listen to the good things about God, right? If you have one foot in the world and one foot in the Bible, you're only going to listen to the things from God that are good. You're not going to have the convictions of the world because half your body's in that. So you're going to take the good from God and the good from the world, and you're going to blend them, which creates its own worldview in itself.
It does create its own worldview. And so you haven't heard this because I just saw this article a couple of days ago, but I'm going to throw something out to you and get your comments on it because I really thought this was insightful. Bible says, and again, the subject is worldview, and we're keeping it very, very rudimentary, a biblical worldview versus a secular worldview. Bible sales, you ready? Last year, 2024, printed Bible sales are up plus 24%.
Wow.
Wow. When I saw that, I was like, please do tell. Explain that. Well, here's the interesting part of the article. The publishers, the Christian publishers, they're not even sure that they can totally explain what has caused this massive increase. But they offer three. Yeah, you just said revival, which I think is very plausible. But they offered three possibilities, which I really like because all three go hand in hand.
Okay.
And I'm gonna get your comment on. Number one, they are looking for answers, and they believe from what they've heard that the Bible may have some.
Yeah,
That's
I've seen
the
a
first
lot of
one.
comments
Okay.
of people talking about that.
The second one is they have already determined that the culture around them does not have any answers to the problems, challenges, and struggles that they're going through. And then thirdly, they just want something that they can hold in their hands and focus on and disconnect from all the digital devices, and they're turning to printed Bibles to get out of that digital environment. So anyway, what do you think about that? I thought it was awesome.
I think that's a very good thing. I've seen a lot of people getting new Bibles recently because they realized that always having to do their Bible reading on their phone, they'd get distracted and they'd go respond to a text and never come back to it. But I also think that, I don't remember, I think it was at our student conference, but they had talked about revival, which is the word I had used, was like, they said they visioned darkness covering the world, but then footsteps of a giant essentially walking across the earth, leaving a light trail in his path, which essentially they used to symbolize Jesus walking across. But it was like the darkness is the sin and the death and the destruction and the natural disasters and all these things. And then after they happen, light is covering it because people are going to God. They're going looking for answers, like you said, and that it leaves a revival in its wake. And I'm like, but look, think about how many things have happened. Natural disasters, things like that have happened in just the last year. And think about how many people that has brought to Christ through it, looking for answers, looking for healing, looking for comfort, looking for community. Because think about it, who is generally the people responding to these natural disasters? It's churches. And I think that's just it's a great response to it too. I think that personally, if you didn't tell me any of that statistics and you said, why do you think Bible sales were up? I would say, I think it's a response to people wanting comfort from the destruction, like nothing else from it. I think that it is a response to the goodness of the community reaching out.
Yep. I think that's awesome. And hey, you and I both talked about this. Don't think this is going to be a very long episode, but here's what I would say to kind of wrap this topic up. And I had the privilege to speak to some soldiers actually this past weekend. Really appreciated the opportunity. They invited me to a small group of Army National Guard soldiers, and they said, we would like for you to come lead a Bible study. And I said, it'd be my honor and privilege as a former soldier. And so it was very casual, very laid back. But one of the things that I recommended to them, I said, you can take any Army value, matter of fact, any service, I don't care which one it is, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, they all have common values. There are virtues nested within those values. But I said, you take the values and you pick one out and you give it to me, and I will show you where that is in the Bible. I know sometimes we think that the services developed those. They didn't. They chose those, but where they originated from is out of the Bible. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to believe in the Bible. You don't have to be a Christian. You can be an atheist, but one of the things that you're doing yourself a disservice in, if you don't realize that the book that basically formed not only America, but Western civilization are the values contained within the Bible. And I really, at this stage in my life, as an older person, an older dad, an older brother, just an elder, and again, that's not a title, that's a role in the church. I am an elder, and part of my job is to point people to the truth. And one of the primary things I tell them is all of these values that we espouse as Americans, as Christians, as Western nations, every one of those values was modeled by Jesus.
Yep.
Because a value is great, but if I hadn't seen somebody model it, I'm going to have trouble making it relevant in my life. And so that's where the Bible as a written word and then the example of Jesus that he lived out, they go hand in hand. So I want my life to be transformed by Jesus, but I want it to be transformed in the way that I'm able to live the same values that he lived.
Yep, I agree. I'm studying it in government class right now. We're studying natural economics, and it's talking about just the way man works the land, the values that they have to have that, and how they build a community through it. And so it's talking about, a barn doesn't just sprout up from the ground. It takes work. It takes labor. It takes these things. Well, these things are modeled by Christ and all these. And so we're just talking about how every aspect of human life can be explained by God, right? There's not a single thing that can't be explained. You go, oh, what about murder? Well, that's the depravity of God, right? Sin is the it is the lack of God in your life. The things that come from that.
Yeah, the depravity without God.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
I never,
You're okay.
Yeah, there we go. But it's just I think it's just a beautiful thing, but we have to realize that there are hundreds of millions of people that don't have that worldview that we share, right? And so you can't, charge like a bull in a china shop into every situation going, oh, well, I'm right because, I've experienced God, because these people haven't. You've got to be that light for them. You've got to be the light in the darkness, like how I described the footsteps of light over the world, lighting up the darkness. You got to be the light in it. You can't just go to someone and say, well, you're wrong, I'm right, you got to follow me, because they're not going to want that. And I've talked about that the whole time. That's something I'm extremely passionate about, is you have to be there and be like, hey, I know you're doing things the way you want right now. That's totally all right. That's the way you want to live your life. That's okay. But if things get dark, if things get low, if you feel like there's no answers, my number, you can always call me. I'll be there, right? And I have light. I have good news for you. But if you don't want to hear it now, that's all right. But it'll still be there because it's been there since the beginning of time. There's always been the good news. And so I just think that that's a way you have to go into it, is depending on whatever your worldview is, you can't just charge into it. And that's something I hate about social media, is nobody takes the time to go, well, I see why I can understand why nobody plays devil's advocate saying, okay, I can understand why you believe that, but can we talk about specifically why you believe this is okay? Can we talk about it? Can we take our anger at each other and separate it and have a civil conversation about why we disagree on this topic? And nobody wants to do that because we hide behind our screens, and you can block a number as quick as you can add a number. And it's I feel like the culture which is being developed on social media, the way a lot of us communicate, is very cowardly. I feel like a lot of people don't have the courage to stand up and talk to people. And so I think that if we did more of that, we're more accepting. We don't have to agree with them, but more accepting of the other worldviews, we could have better conversations and make a greater difference.
I love that, Eva. And I'm going to give you a real practical example that I shared with the soldiers this weekend, because there were 3 particular values that I picked out. One of them was integrity. Everybody will say that integrity is a good thing. Oh, I want integrity in my life. I want integrity in my business, in my church, in my relationships with my family. I don't know of anybody that you're going to walk up to and say, hey, do you think integrity is a good thing or a bad thing? Survey says absolutely it's a good thing. But to your point, and I made this with the soldiers, if you are posting on social media and you're posting all of these negative things and you're attacking people, but that is something that you would not do to their face, you have a lack of integrity. That is not integrity, to hide behind a screen or to hide behind a phone and just blurt something out, as convicted as you may be in it. But if you do not have the courage, you've got to ask yourself, if this person or this group of people were standing in front of me right now, do I have the courage to say this in front of them in this manner, in the moment, right now? If the answer to that is no, I would recommend that you delete your post. I'd recommend that you not even do it to start with, but delete it, because it is a lack of integrity. So, I'm not coming off of that.
No, yeah, I agree. I will die on that hill that if you will not say it to their face, then you shouldn't be saying it at all, because I've said it to people during the. I've talked about this during the election. I commented on somebody's post. I said, the fact that you're attacking somebody because they used an eagle screech in their post and claiming that you know all about them now says a lot about what you view about the your country. Because I was like, that's our national anthem. I was not a lot nicer about it. I'm being blunt. It's been a couple months, but it was like you attacking somebody for using an eagle screech, which is our national animal, saying that's is it indicative?
Indicative
of their political party, says a lot about your loyalty to your nation. And I've told people that straight to their face. I've told my classmates that somebody was attacking somebody for something, and I was like, what are you going on about? Our loyalty to our nation should be greater than our loyalty to a party. And I have no shame in saying that. I would say that to someone's face, because it's a great question. It's because at the end of the day, most of us are still Americans. But off topic, but what you were saying about integrity, there's something I was taught in the classroom as a kid that I think is completely relevant, but it's called think. And if you ever remember it being in your classroom, it says, before I ask something, I need to think. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And if it is not one of those things, then you don't say it at all. And that's something that's stuck with me since I was a kid, is think before you speak. But think has a greater meaning than just asking yourself it. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it nice? And is it kind? I forgot what the I was already, but
those are great.
Yeah. And so that's something, it's like, if you're not going to say it to their face, then don't say it at all. Think about it.
I love that.
Yeah.
And let's face it, most of us, Eva, have a challenge with that. I had this conversation with a friend yesterday. He's very sharp-witted, has a unbelievable quick-witted sense of humor. Well, the danger, and I know several people like that, the danger in that is sometimes you come back with something that's very witty, very funny in the moment, but it's not necessarily helpful, but it's because it's the way God did design you, it just kind of rolls off your tongue. And my point to him was, it's not just in humor. Sometimes it's in our ability to argue a counterpoint, and our brain thinks so quickly in the moment that we just roll out the first thing that comes off of our tongue without realizing, you know what, that's not necessarily helpful in this moment. Whether it's comedy, humor, whether it's a very valid point. And we just have to be very deliberate, intentional, and careful with our words, because again, once they're out, we can't get them back. And I can't tell you how many times. I think I am very good at it. I have practiced it all of my life. And even at my age, there are times that I will make a comment in casual conversation, and I will walk away from the comment going, you know what? They could have taken that last statement 180 degrees out from the way I intended it, and I could have really hurt their feelings just then. And if I'm aware of that, I always immediately either call them back or I'll walk back to them and I go, hey, you know what? That last statement I made, you could have taken it this way, and if you did, I am so sorry. Now, what you got to be careful of, because some people will come back and say, yeah, but you're walking around on eggshells all the time. And, no.
But it becomes a way of life.
It becomes a way of life.
Practice
I
it,
want to be
you
sensitive to the others and the way I communicate. And so all that to say, we can all be a little bit more diligent in this culture, in our civility, in our grace, and in the way that we just interact with each other.
100%. I agree. I'm really bad about like halfway getting through a statement and then I'll pause and I'll be like, wait, I don't mean it that way. And I'll have to think for a second because I will start talking first thing on my mind. And I'm like, wait, this makes no sense. Or this is coming out how I didn't intend it. And I'll say it. I'll be like, I'm so sorry. Let me try that again. And I'll start over with my response. I'm like, I can't take back what I said, but they can see that I had a conviction. I thought about it. I have corrected it very quickly. I did not let it sit out there. And that's something I'm working on because I'm really bad about like cutting people off, but I'm getting better at it, hopefully. But we all need to think a little bit more. And it's just being courteous of, our pastor said it great years ago. And it's one thing he said that has always stuck with me. And it was, just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I can't accept you. And that is something I think I model very well in my life is I don't care how you live your life. Right? I won't agree with you on it. I could tell you if you asked me my honest opinion, my opinion of it, but I'm not going to berate you for how you live your life because you don't view the world the way I do. And you could berate me for how I live my life because it seems so structured or so constrictive to how you view the world should be viewed. And so it's all right. But if you ever want to hear about mine, I would love to share it. And that's great. I've made a great friend doing that. Funny story. I don't know if you've ever heard me joke about this, but the only date I've ever been on was with a gay guy who was also an atheist, which it's a long story short. Very nice guy, right? We met on a cruise ship. Doesn't get any worse than that. But he asked me about why I believe what I believe.
Whoa. Was it a date? Really?
Well, we went to lunch, which was fine.
Okay.
Then we hung out for 3 hours after that.
Okay.
So, and we kept running into the same staff. And so they teased us about it the rest of the trip. So it's a joke now. Yeah, it's just a joke. But then Uncle Alger came on and he was like, and all these things. And so I call it that now. But very nice guy. And he was like, Eva, why do you believe this? He was like, because I disagree with you on it. But can you explain to me why you believe this? What the good news story is? Like, why is this what you've put your faith in? And so we went and sat at lunch and we talked about it for 2 hours. And then he was like, he goes, I don't agree on everything you said, but I see where you're coming from. This is a 17-year-old guy. We're both 17 at this point. He's like, this is a very, like, I understand where you're coming from. It makes a lot of sense. I can see how that's modeled in culture. It's not so hateful. And then so we just hung out for the next 3 hours and we kept talking. And it was just really sweet. Well, he texted me a couple weeks later and he was just like, I've been thinking about what you said. I've asked more questions. I've done more research. I'm not letting just a assumption completely blind my view of it. And he was like, I've made some changes in my own life because I do like what you talked about and how it's modeled. And because I don't necessarily agree where they came from doesn't mean it's not a good value. And he texted me, I texted him again recently, just asking how he was doing. And he was like, I just have a lot of hope and a lot of joy. Now he hasn't given his life to Christ. None of that has changed, but there's a spark. There is something that has been lit because he will follow up with me every couple of months. It's been a year now, every couple of months, and just let me know how he's doing, how he's applying what we talked about. He'll ask how I'm doing. We talk about it. We encourage each other. We move on. And it was just very sweet. But it was because I went into that conversation saying, I don't agree with you in the slightest on a lot of your topics, but I do accept where you're coming from. And I've made a really good friend and a good connection through it.
I love it. That's awesome.
So I try and model what I talk about too.
You do, and you do a great job. And I love the adjustments that you're making. It's been fun to watch. And I hope you love the adjustments that I'm making.
I do. That's really this podcast, as much as we do it for y'all, really has helped us learn how to talk with each other.
It has, and it will continue as you graduate from high school, go off to college.
I know,
and,
things are about to change.
Yeah, things are about to change. It's going to continue to be a big learning curve for you, your mother, and I. But we have made a decision. Regardless of what happens, we're always going to be able to talk from generation to generation.
Hey, if you enjoyed our episode, make sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a review because it helps people who don't know about us hear our message. And if you want to follow us on our socials, follow us at G2G_podcast on Instagram and Generation to Generation on Facebook.